Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing, I mean nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grief process. You know, with roughly 100 million caregivers in the US and Canada alone, that's about a third of the population. That means that everyone probably knows someone caring for a loved one. Join Dave and his guests now and every Wednesday at noon Pacific Time as they discuss avoiding caregiver burnout and surviving grief. So find a comfortable place to relax, kick up your feet, and prepare to feel better and to receive practical tips and tools that you can start using immediately to get you through today and every day so you can survive your tomorrows. But not just survive, but to live life fully and abundantly. Yes, you heard me right. That is a possible goal to achieve. And now, here's your host, Dave Nassani.
From Los Angeles, the Big LA, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I am Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, coming to you live globally through the world-famous Blog Talk Radio Network, as well as 8 other audio and video platforms. I just discovered one more today on the internet, including YouTube and iTunes, and where all our recorded pod and videocasts are saved for your later on-demand listening pleasure. Isn't that nice? Including, of course, our website, caregiverscaregiver.com. And if that's too hard to remember, just try davethecaregiver.com. I've got so many domains, I don't know what to do with them. Our goal here is to do our very best to help you avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout. And we have a very, very exciting show planned for you today with my lovely co-host, Adrienne Gruberg, founder of the Caregiver Space. Say hello, Adrienne. She's saying hello.
Hello.
Today we'll be interviewing the amazing and very knowledgeable Denise Brown. No, not Nicole Simpson's sister. It's a different one. This is the 8-time author and founder of Caregiving.com way back in 1996 when my wife had a stroke, when the internet was just a little baby. So stay tuned. You will not want to miss this show. Wow, the last time she was on my show, she had only written 6 books. Now she's up to 8. So she's a very important person, and we're excited to have her on the show. I am your host, Dave Nassani, and this show is to caregivers of every single kind. And the one thing we know about caregivers is that they are very caring, and they're selfless, and they're sacrificial. But they have this tiny little problem. They're very prone to burnout, poor things, because they tend to put everyone else's needs above their own. And don't forget, I was a caregiver too, so I too was prone to burnout, and that's why I'm here trying to teach you what I've learned the hard way, and hopefully you don't have to learn it the hard way. We can even learn something from American Airlines, United Airlines, all those airlines that rip people off of their planes, because they tell us in the event of an emergency, put your own oxygen mask on first before you attempt to help your loved one with their mask, right? Put yours on first. I don't know what I tell you. It just sounds so selfish. I mean, just imagine, I say this every time, the plane's going down. Adrian's dog is barking, your kid is screaming. Are you going to really put your kid's mask on first, or yours on first when they're like gasping for breath? You know, we all know what we're supposed to do, but will we actually do it? Well, airlines know that if you don't, that you're going down, that you'll burn out, you'll black out, you won't be of any good to anybody with anything. And you know, caregivers are exactly the same way, aren't they? Well, we also talk about grief and loss here and the devastating effects it can have on us. Anytime we suffer a loss, we go through this thing called the grief process. And it could take days, it could take weeks, it could take months, it could take years to get through it. You might never get through it, but not if you listen to this show, because you will get through it, because we'll help you, especially if you kind of feel like you're stuck. So there's only one way out of the grief process. You got to go through it. You know, there's no shortcuts, can't go around it, over it, under it. So like I said, hopefully we can help you through your grief. And I do want to take this time and thank my last week's guest, Cassidy Bastian, a certified nurse's aide since she was 18 years old, talking all about hospice, a great subject, especially those, you know, who are in elder care and dementia and Alzheimer's. So listen to that show, and all of our shows, including this show, is all on our website, caregiverscaregiver.com. And speaking of caregivers and books, we weren't talking about books, but we are now. I'm so excited. Our long-awaited third book is getting closer and closer, and it's going to become a reality very soon. Don't know when exactly because there are things that are not in my control. But we'll all let you know when you can begin the pre-purchase process, and it's called "It's My Life Too." Someone just told me that sounds like an angry statement. I says, well, many caregivers are kind of angry when they realize that they didn't sign up for this, and they're stuck in caregiver prison. And yes, they're conflicted. They love their loved one, but they hate what it's doing to them because they're burning out. So it should sound a little angry or upset. It's my life too, by golly. And you bang the desk like that. When to say yes and when to say no in reclaiming your caregiver sanity. I'll get you girls' opinion on that. Now, we're believing to pre-sell 10,000 books to our caregiver followers. And who knows, New York Times bestselling list? Why not? Something we can hope for, as
Aspire
difficult as
to.
it may seem. Yeah, I mean, some say it's a political thing, but it's in God's hands. It's in our followers' hands. So, all right, enough of that. A very big welcome to Adrian, my lovely co-host, and Denise.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Denise. Thanks so much for agreeing to this interview, and I'm so excited to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me. I'm thrilled to be with both of you.
The honor is ours. And you two are like old buddies, right? From Manhattan. Probably go out clubbing together.
Denise isn't in Manhattan.
So Adrian came to our National Caregiving Conference in December that happened in Chicago.
Really?
Chicago.
He drove all the way to Chicago or flew or something.
Flew.
I bet your arms are tired.
It was a wonderful event.
Yeah, our second annual National Caregiving Conference is November this year, November 10th and 11th in Chicago.
In National Caregiver Month. Last time,
yes.
I know.
Yeah.
That's a great excuse to go to Chicago. I mean, I can't think of any other excuse, but that would be a great one.
I'll tell you. And you know what? So when we had it in December, the weather was good before, but the weather after, the day after, was terrible. That's when a snowstorm hit. And that was pretty much the only snow that we had all winter, if you can believe that.
Oh, wow.
So people could get there, but then trying to get home the next day was tough. So I moved it into November because I planned it earlier this year. And if you want to come to Chicago, the best time are October and November, because typically the weather is beautiful. It's beautiful.
Turning
yeah,
of the leaf.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you lived in Chicago. I thought you were from New York.
Nope. I'm Chicago born and bred.
Son of a gun. Well, I sure got that one wrong, didn't I?
It's okay. We're both big city girls.
Yeah, I mean, I detected an East Coast accent, but Chicago accents are slightly different from New York accents. They're both East Coast, though. So, Denise, I always like to ask my guests, just take a couple of minutes and, just who is and who isn't, because of the Nicole Simpson thing, Denise Brown. And why was she put on this earth? Do you get mistaken for that ever since the OJ thing?
Yes, it still happens 20 years later.
Really?
Or 25. I always think it happened a lot. Yeah, it happened a lot, but it's every once in a while it still happens, which I think is kind of interesting.
Amazing. All right, so go ahead. Tell us who you are for those who've never heard of you.
Yeah, so I started working with family caregivers in 1990, and it was a career change for me. I had graduated college, was writing for some trade magazines, and no one was reading what I was writing, which drove me nuts. And I thought because I have a huge ego, to be honest with you. So there you go.
There's a when that happens.
There's a little bit about me. My ego is huge. So I thought there's got to be something else out here. And actually, at the time I was living out east, I had moved to work for the company that published the trade magazines, and I was living in Bucks County, which is north of Philadelphia. It's a beautiful area. Oh my gosh, south of the Poconos, foothills of the Poconos. So I decided there's got to be something else out there in the world for me. I was 27, 28 at the time, and I just fell into this job working with older adults. I worked in a small town along the Delaware River in New Jersey, Lamberton, and I fell into this part-time job managing this congregate meal site. So the seniors in this small town would come for a hot meal at lunch, and we delivered Meals on Wheels. And that moved me into working with those who care for older adults. And then I managed a respite care program through the state of New Jersey for this county in New Jersey. Did that for a year and then moved into admissions director for a couple nursing homes. So I continued listening, interacting with family caregivers, and just was fascinated by these stories. And as a writer, we're all looking for the story, right? And there was
Yep.
no more compelling story than the story of caregiving. You know, it's a comedy, it's a drama, it's a mystery, it's, you know, it's fiction, it's nonfiction, it's all of it rolled up, right? It's all of it rolled up into one. So listening to these stories, I thought there's got to be a way that I can really marry my publishing experience and then my knowledge of what the family caregiver is looking for, which is support, connecting to others who understand, who are in a similar situation. So I started a business in 1995. The first product that I created was a newsletter, was a print publication that came out every month. And I considered it to be an at-home support group. So it was a support group that went to you. And then in November 1995, I heard about this newfangled thing called the internet, and I thought, I want to be on, I want to be on that. And so I built a website over Christmas.
Let me interrupt you.
1995. Yeah, go
Fool
ahead.
around with your little. You're
Yeah, is
going
that
loud
better?
and loud and
Is that
low.
better? Is that better?
Yes. Hopefully it'll be consistent.
Okay. Do you want me to
Okay.
keep
The
my?
internet.
Yeah. Okay. So I built a website. I built a website over Christmas 1995. If you remember Prodigy, which
Yep.
was
Mm-hmm.
an internet service provider, you could build what they call Prodigy pages. So I did that to see what was, if it was worth it. It was, and then I got a domain name in 1996, which was caregiving.com, and then it just kind of built from there.
Wow. You're amazing. How old were
Oh,
you when you were like building websites and doing all that stuff?
I was 20.
Oh, well,
Well,
that's
let's see.
why.
No, actually, I would have been 32, 33.
Really
Yeah.
amazing. I was just a baby in 1996. Kinda.
Yeah, well,
Yes, we
so
always.
was I.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was 20
Yeah.
years younger, too.
We were all just babies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what should we talk about, Denise? Let's start with the 6 stages of caregiving because I never heard of that before, and I saw it on your blog. So just take your time and you know, does that mean if there's 6 stages that as you're getting closer to the 6th stage that one day you won't be a caregiver anymore? Because that would be good. I mean, it'd be sad for a
Can
loved
be.
one. Can
Yeah,
be, yes.
yeah. So once I launched my website, I was getting emails from people that were asking basically the same questions. You know, what do I do now? I'm caring for a family member. What in the world is going to happen? So I wanted to be able to give them an answer that was realistic, but yet sprinkled with a little bit of hope. So I started thinking about how we stage Alzheimer's. And there's a certain amount of comfort in knowing that what's going on today is normal based on what the disease process is, and that if I know what's coming, I can prepare. So I
Mm.
thought, well, what if we staged a caregiving experience? What would that look like? So I sat down in 1997. I was working a day job. I've worked jobs throughout to keep everything going. And I remember sitting in my cube at this day job thinking, okay, what does a caregiving experience look like? So my initial concept was 4 stages. And then I put it out on my website, asked for feedback. I added 2 more stages, and then have tweaked, refined, adjusted the stages over the past 20 years. And basically, it starts out with you think that caregiving is in your future. That's the first stage. And then it moves through to the Godspeed caregiver, which is 2 years after caregiving has ended. You now have this perspective. You've been able to stand back, to look at what's happened, to understand what you've been through, and then you decide, okay, I want to give back. I want to make life good for myself, for others behind me in a caregiving experience. And that could be something as significant as what Adrienne has done by starting her website. She did that to make it better for the people that were coming up behind her.
Right.
Mhm.
And it could be, yeah, and it could be as small as just, making sure that you smile at everyone that you see, knowing that maybe that's a family caregiver. So it could be big, it could be what you consider to be small, but it's all about the impact. Because you've been impacted by the caregiving experience, you want to continue your life in a way that's impactful, meaningful, and that's the Godspeed caregiver.
Here's a question for both of you. What percentage of the caregivers who are no longer caregivers do you think, in some way or some form or some fashion, uh, go into some kind of activity to help other caregivers who are coming up through the ranks? Do you think? Is it like 50-50? I mean, I know we have no way of knowing, but just from your experience.
Well, I come in touch with a lot of caregivers who are writing books or, have their own plans of how things should work and are looking for places to publish and put it up. But some people are just relieved that it's where it is, whether it's because their loved one has recovered or their loved one's passed on, or just in remission from whatever condition. But I don't
Yeah.
think everybody wants to give back. I wish they did.
Yeah, I guess it depends on their temperament and what they're going through, how bad of an experience they went through, etc. What
Right.
do you
And it
think,
also,
Denise?
I think that's such a great question. What percentage is it? And I just don't know. I do know that there are some, and it isn't everyone. And I do think that
No?
everyone is changed by the experience, so they live a life differently than
Yes.
they did before. And it's just, what's the life like for you now? So I started a training program in January of 2015 called the Certified Caregiving Consultant Training Program. And
Mhm.
so individuals go through this training program if they want to work with family caregivers one-on-one.
Is
So
this while they're a caregiver or after they're a caregiver?
the goal is after caregiving has ended and they want to
Mm.
give back and they want to turn their personal experience into a profession.
So
So
you're
what's the
helping them do that.
yeah,
Amazing.
so they take a training program. It's virtual. There's a couple opportunities to do it in person as well. And it's just thinking about, okay, I want to make it easier for someone, so I want to consult with family caregivers
Mm.
so that I can share what I learned. If you think about it, when you're in a caregiving situation, you are an expert at so many different arenas, right? And you become an expert about what in your community works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So why lose that? Why not turn that into a profession so that you share that, so that it's easier for the next two are in line behind you?
Yeah, in a way, you're helping others by cloning yourself to make more of you. That's one way of looking at it.
There's just so much of us to go around. Yeah.
Right. Yes,
No,
hopefully they don't. No,
I
but I
was so
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I was so impressed as I was looking at your site and your blog and stuff, that you had all these courses, and I says, "Oh my gosh, you've done an excellent job at monetizing what you do." Because let's face it, we all spend money on what we do, and sometimes nothing comes in. And so, fortunately, some of us have the resources, but many times we don't. And so, if we can just get the thing to break even, it'd be. But you've done an excellent job at not only monetizing what you do and all your gifts and talents, but also monetizing it for your caregivers. Because I saw something in there about I forgot exactly what it was, but it was like how, I don't know if this is it, but it was like blogging for. It was a course to teach people how to blog, or it was a course to teach people how to do something. I wish I could remember. But you're helping people to like start their own business or
Yes.
their own caregiver helping thing,
Right.
if kind of a business, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And here's what's interesting about that. So we were kind of talking about this before the show started, that isolation and loneliness is a challenge during caregiving, right? So we're
Yeah.
isolated, we're alone. When you start a small business, you're isolated and alone, right?
Yep.
So I wanted those who wanted to start a small business to help family caregivers to also be part of a community. So when you go through the training program, you're also part of a community of others who
Hmm.
are in the program, who've graduated, who've become certified. So for instance, before our show today, I had my monthly conference call with those who've graduated from the program. We get together every month, we share, we encourage, we talk about what's going on so that you're not alone and isolated in starting a business. Why
Yep.
keep that? Why continue that from caregiving into your own business? And it's hard. It is hard to start your own business. It
Yeah.
is hard. It
But you
is
give great
hard.
advice in your courses. So anyone who wants to start their own business, I recommend you check that out. And if you want to get into something to help caregivers, you check that out as well. But I've never seen a site just so complete and so. I mean, of course, you've had since 1990 to be doing this. You've been doing it for over 30 years, and so obviously you're very good at it. And you're I understand people want to interview you. All you've been on so many different shows and spoken at so many different platforms. You spoke at Harvard, etc. So it's nice to be recognized as an authority and a talent that you are. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, who would have thought, right? Who would
Who
have
would have
thought?
thunk?
But I also, it also goes to show that it can happen to anyone, right?
Right.
It's your tenacity, your persistence. It's looking at resources around you, knowing that money is a resource, but sometimes you have to create other resources that take the place of money, and then just by grit and determination, making it happen.
Well, you didn't give up, like you said. People weren't listening to you, and so you could have just says, "I guess this isn't working," and go get a job at McDonald's or something.
Yes. So here's the thing, it's hard to stay in business. That's the other part of it too, because there are so many challenges and struggles. You think, okay, I'm not making the money. This is just too hard. But the path to success is continuing. You can't stay on the path of success if you quit, which is one of the biggest challenges, how to know whether to stay or quit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you and I should both take her classes, Adrian. We'll be better monetizers.
Well, you know what's going on with me, so
Talking to me or her?
yeah, it was a decision on my part
Yes.
to wait for grants and not have to have advertisers, and
Right.
and figured that down the line it will be monetized another way. But
Hmm.
the website itself was designed to be a respite from ads for diapers and funeral homes. I
Mhm.
mean, it's really part of what I wanted to provide was
Yeah.
not being monetized.
Yeah. It's a
So
great,
I'm
great,
looking for money from Ford or
great idea.
not looking for money from Trump, but I wanted
He might give you some. Don't give up
I
on
know.
Trump.
Oh my goodness.
not with the Care Act the way it is. No.
All right, we're not going to get political here.
I know.
No, I'm
Because
just saying
oh gosh, I
The
could go on
Care
forever.
Act. It's just amazing that with the election and with all of the discussion about the Care Act, all of these things, the word caregiver never comes up.
I know.
It's like we are, in fact, the invisible patient,
Yeah,
and I believe that firmly.
it's
I
never came
mean,
up
how
even
many?
even with Obamacare and the insurance companies. It's never
No,
ever.
it never.
But I
And
think if we
that's the
lobbied more,
problem.
perhaps it might. We need to be vocal like
But
everyone else who's vocal.
but caregivers don't have the time to be
I know.
vocal. We've got to find someone who can be
They
vocal
need
for them.
representatives like you and I and
Exactly.
Denise, to
Yeah.
be their mouthpiece.
Exactly.
And
We'll,
I'll just be
I was going to take a
political for just.
quick break. Can you
Oh
hold
yeah,
that thought?
yes,
Write
yes.
it down so you don't forget, because we're
I've
all
held
kind
it.
of
Okay,
we're all
yeah.
old, except for you. You're not old. Okay, so we'll be right back. Don't go away.
One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships is about Charlene, a stroke survivor. Back in 1996, Charlene was a healthy, normal, very active 52-year-old woman whose amazing talents resemble that of both a Martha Stewart and a Wonder Woman. But all that changed when she suffered a massive stroke that left her severely speech impaired and paralyzed on the right side. Who am I? My name is David. I've had the privilege of being Charlene's husband since 1975. We had a wonderful fairy tale storybook-like courtship that culminated in our marriage a year later. Charlene had just come out of a marriage where after 10 years, she received 2 black eyes and a broken nose by her former husband when he came home high on speed. Charlene believed in no second chances of any kind for abuse, so she left. Finding herself all alone in the world with her 5 and 10-year-old daughters Cynthia Lorraine and Deborah Lynn, she started raising them by herself for the next 2 years. Then fate brought us all together. After falling in love with Charlene, Cindy, and Debbie, our love then produced Rebecca Elizabeth. We had a wonderful, normal life for the next 20 years. But today, things are very different for everyone. One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships is the amazing story of a woman's fight to survive all that life had thrown her way. Everyone who knows Charlene is thoroughly amazed at how she lives day by day, month by month, year by year, and with a smile on her face and hope in her heart that everything is going to be okay. Her faith in God is her foundation in this hope, that everything happens for a reason, and what doesn't kill her will make her stronger. She inspires everyone who meets her. Her accomplishments since her stroke are very impressive, often making us normal people look like whiners and complainers. So pick up your copy of One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships today. You won't be disappointed. Just hear what best-selling author Lynn Barrington has to say about it. If you think you have it bad, read this book. This is a beautiful, genuine story told from the heart. It's inspiring and easy to read. When you finish this book, you'll be able to look at your concerns in a new light. How about the reaction of 9-time Grammy and Dove Award recipient, the godfather of contemporary gospel Christian music, Andre Crouch? Charlene just won't let the promises of God go, and she has not let her circumstances get in the way of her faith. She's not just a survivor, she's more than a conqueror, as the Bible states. You'll be encouraged by her testimony, regardless of what you're going through. Available everywhere, but if you purchase your copy directly from the author's website, onearmonleg100words.com, Charlene and David will personally autograph your copy. Enjoy!
And we're back with Denise Brown and Adrian Gruberg. So, Denise, what was that thought you were going to say before the break?
I just wanted to mention that one of the frustrations with our political environment now is that it takes us off the issues, right? So we don't have any ears to listen to us talk about what family
Right.
caregivers need because there's so much
Noise.
nonsense. Yeah. What would you call it?
Noise.
Oh, noise, right. Bad
Yeah.
noise. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
White sound. Yes, I agree. So, what's the next stage in the caregiver stages?
So here's the thing that I have learned over the years. So I've tweaked this, I've adjusted it. So we start off thinking, you know what, maybe in the future I'm going to be caring for someone. You start to, you continue. In the third stage, you're completely entrenched. It is your life. This is where burnout would be most prevalent. But you move to a pragmatic stage when you realize, okay, you know what, I don't have to panic about this anymore. It doesn't have to be the end of me. There's a beginning. And then you move into, okay, this is our life. We're going to make the best of it. And then the fifth stage is the transitioning caregiver. And this one took me a long time to figure out. I knew there was a transition. So what I finally figured out is there's a transition from doing to being. So it's the transition that happens at your carry, and that's the term that we use for carry recipient, your carry's end of life. So you've battled the healthcare system. You've battled to get quality care. You've battled to get help. You've just battled, right? And now you think about battling death and you make that switch from, you know what, there is no battle anymore. I've won. We've won. Death is no longer the enemy. It's the idea that this is the natural cycle of life. So it's that switch from doing to being, which is such a difficult switch to make, and yet can be so powerful. And there's a couple reasons, actually, a couple family caregivers helped me figure this out. And one in particular blogged on my website about caring for her mom. And her mom had chronic urinary tract infections. And we know that this is a problem that happens as we get older. And chronic means that you treat it, another one comes back, you treat it, another one comes back. So Sandy's mom lived with her. She was bedbound, had dementia. And Sandy was determined to cure the UTIs. So she found specialist after specialist that she and her mom went to. The last specialist they went to was 2 hours from their home. Sandy packed up her mom early in the morning, got her in the car, they drove, went to the specialist, sat in the specialist's waiting room. You know how that is. You wait, went in to see the specialist, and the specialist basically told them everything that they had already heard. This is chronic. We can use antibiotics, but there's not going to be an end to them. They're just going to continue. Sandy went home. That's when she was like, okay, well, let's talk about hospice. Her mom died. And a few months later, she came back to caregiving.com and she gave us an update. And she said, you know, when I look back, I wish I would have stopped the battle with the UTIs. I wish I would have just been there with my mom. I wish I would have stayed home with her, held her hand, been with her. That's the switch. That's the switch.
Wow.
It's
Doesn't
hard
happen while you're in the middle of it very often.
Yeah.
Did she
And
have
it's
this?
so she never
Go
actually
ahead.
made this. Yeah, she did. She would not be someone that said she made the switch because she continued doing. She even really continued doing with hospice about the UTIs. She had some
Mm-hmm.
disagreements about what's the treatment, what's the protocol, and her perspective afterward was it was a waste of my energy, and my energy would have been better off spent with my mom, just being, rather than consumed with who's going to help us with these UTIs, who's going to help us with these UTIs. It's a tough switch to make, and it's tough to know when to make the switch. But the power of the switch is then you have these magical moments of just being in the presence of each other and of other family members, friends.
I, I have to say, I was very lucky to have made the switch to being while I was still caring for Steve. It was clear that at the beginning, finding the right surgeon and understanding what the right treatment for his cancer were, and that was the fight. But once it became clear that this was going to happen, that this was going to go on, and that to weather it, we needed to be a team, supporting each other. It was that switch, and I would not have been able to put it that way until now. But that was the switch.
Well, it's because
Yeah.
you're too engrossed in the everyday burnout, let's, for lack of a better term. And then when things are over and you know you're able to just calm down and there's no more fires to put out, then you can reflect, you know, and you can just say, wow, okay, and you can start to see what you did right, what you did wrong, how you could have done it better, and so on. And I don't think that's why it's so important for caregivers to get away during the madness. You know, go away for an hour or two to Starbucks or get a massage or take a weekend off. You know, find a care sitter, etc., so that you can have more frequent sanity moments, I call them, just where you can think straight and you're not always putting fires out. Does that make sense?
You know what's interesting? So the other question that we really struggle with during caregiving is, am I enough, right? Am I doing enough? Am I asking enough? Am I being enough of an advocate? Should I be doing more?
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to a family caregiver this past weekend. She actually just completed my course,
Mm.
and she was talking about the insight she just made about her dad, who had died 2 years earlier. And as she started thinking about it, she went from wondering, had she done enough, to realizing she was doing too much. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, it's that switch. So when she stepped back and thought about, wait a minute, maybe I was doing too much rather than I didn't do enough to save him, she
Mm.
realized that her dad had been slowly but very uh, with he was he was putting into place his goodbyes over a period of time, but she just didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize it. So he was someone that was more of a hermit, and all of a sudden he started spending time with family members, doing things with them. And now she realizes that's how he said
What it was
goodbye.
about.
Yeah. So she had been struggling with his decision not to go to the hospital. And so she thought it was because she wasn't doing enough that he didn't go to the hospital, and that would have saved his life. But her realization that that's not what he wanted. He was ready to go, and he was putting all the goodbyes in place, really helped her realize that it was okay. It was okay. She did what he wanted, which was no more hospitalizations. No more.
You know, it almost sounds like the stages of caregiving, as you have presented them, correlate with the stages of grief. Because in the beginning, we kind of go through denial, and then, we get into anger, and then bargaining, depression, and then toward the end, we reach that wonderful, wonderful place of acceptance where we accept the new normal, we embrace it, and we look for all the good things out of it instead of the bad things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And anger is such a powerful emotion during caregiving, too. A couple months ago, a family caregiver was talking about this anger she felt at a support group meeting. She was caring for her mom in her home, so she was 24/7 working. And there was a new support group member that came in and said, "Oh, my life is so hard. My mom is in an assisted living facility." And for this family caregiver, for whatever reason, it hit her at the moment where she was like, "Are you kidding me? That's nothing. I'm so angry
Right.
that you're stressed out about nothing. Look at me. Look at me." And when she was able to step back and look at the anger, she realized it was because she wasn't getting enough help. And that's what the anger really was about. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I
You
mean,
can really,
I see that
go ahead, Adrian. Yeah.
I see that on the website a lot in the forums, that we actually have caregivers get competitive with who's got it worse.
Yes.
It's really a sad thing to be a witness to, and
Yes.
we've done everything that we can to try and deter it, but it's part of that group process, and until they work it out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. And the other part of the comparison, too, is that, oh my gosh, Susie has it so much worse than me. I shouldn't be complaining.
Yeah.
I shouldn't join this website. I shouldn't be part of a support group. So the comparison works in a couple different ways. You can really go
Both
to the
ways,
anger,
yes.
yes, and then you can go to, oh my gosh, I should withhold support for myself because why would I need it when she's got it so bad?
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. It's the one-upmanship in that other case that you had mentioned. Old people, when they get together, they like to share
Oh,
their operations. Yeah, well, I just had, my gallbladder removed. Oh, well, that's nothing.
right.
I just had my spleen removed, and look at this scar over here. Maybe
Yeah,
that's just men. Do women do that too?
Yes, I think the conversation at dinner as you age becomes very different, and everybody starts comparing ailments. But it was interesting. Steve Steve was with a group of his friends, 5 guys from Brooklyn, just characters, and they all went out to dinner, and Steve is the only one that's got terminal cancer, and the other 4 guys haven't stopped complaining and about what was wrong with them, and Steve just said, "Doesn't anybody talk about sex anymore?" It was like this. Our life was never about, arthritis and ulcers and every single thing that could possibly go wrong. So here was the sick one who had a whole different perspective on things.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, why do you call the last stage the Godspeed stage?
It's the whole idea that, okay, a good journey, and the road is open to me now.
Godspeed to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I like that.
yeah, yeah.
So that could come into bucket lists. I saw something on your blog about why caregivers should have bucket lists, and I thought, that's a great concept, because ever since that movie, The Bucket List, came out, you know, I think some of those characters in the movie were terminal or were going to die or whatever, and there's a couple of
Yeah.
ways to die. You can just go hide under the covers and not get out of bed and feel sorry for yourself, or you can say, you know what, doctor says I have 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, whatever it is, I'm going to whatever, you know.
Do.
Yeah, I think it gives caregivers some hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's all about the action, right? Because you can feel
Mm-hmm.
like you have to put things on hold. You're not sure when the other shoe is going to drop, when the next crisis is going to happen. And so you don't want to start something and then think, oh, I can't finish it because the other shoe dropped. It's figuring out a way to keep going. Maybe not the way you did before, but still with goals, with a purpose, with an idea of what could be. And that's where the hope is, right? That's how we keep living.
And
Yeah,
it's not selfish
No,
to
right.
to
Yeah,
have to have
right.
those visions of where you're going to be. And I'm going to mute myself.
okay. Yeah, if somebody's bucket list was to go to the Himalayas and do whatever, they might die there. And you know what? Maybe that's their intention. I'd rather die doing what I love to do in some exotic, adventuresome place.
Absolutely.
Just make sure you say your goodbyes to your family before you go, just in case you don't make it back. But yeah, I'm all for someone dying on their terms and not letting death take them, but handing death over, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think in a caregiving situation, you get
Yes.
used to living with death, right? Maybe death appeared and then disappeared, and then it
Mm-hmm.
appeared and disappeared. And then maybe you start to think the days are numbered. And so you start to look for the breath in the morning to make sure that your Carrie is still alive. So that living with death too can put you in a spot where you feel like I've got to just put my hand under the covers. This is too much. Or it could
Yeah,
motivate you
Right.
to say, I know that life is temporary.
yeah.
So given that it's temporary, what's my legacy? What do I leave? And then how do I create that now? So
Yeah,
it's
I'm
life.
63. My wife's going to be 73 in June. And she's slowing down a little. She's still doing great. She looks great, and she has her electric wheelchair, and she Martha Stewart and Wonder Woman cooking. I come home and the house is clean, the dinner's on the table, the dishes are in the dishwasher. I mean, she's amazingly independent for her condition and her age, because she can't speak. She's paralyzed on the right side. And so we always said, even when we were younger, we'd go on cruises before her stroke, and we'd see people in wheelchairs with oxygen tanks. We don't want to end up like that. We want to do all our traveling while we're healthy enough to. And we did do quite a bit of traveling before the stroke, but then we did quite a bit afterwards. I mean, after her stroke, we went to the Middle East. We went to Israel. We saw the Holy Land. We went to Egypt, saw the pyramids and It wasn't easy. We went to Paris, went to Europe, Brussels, all these places, that isn't the easiest thing for a handicapped person or a wheelchair person to do. There were many times we were trying to catch a train and the elevator was out of order, but
Oh God.
you improvise. We found four rugged college kids. Each one grabbed a corner of the wheelchair and they took her up three flights of stairs. One time the elevator wasn't working, but the escalator was working. So five of us were just pushing, like this, just trying to keep the
Hold
chair
it.
from coming down the stairs. But we made it, and it was an adventure, and I'm glad we did it,
Yeah.
and we are continuing to do it. We just got back from Hawaii for 3
Yep.
weeks. Before that, 6 months ago, we went on a cruise in the different countries, Rome and France, and different European nations. And she didn't get off the boat every single time, but the times we did, it was a challenge, but it was fun. We found the buses that could handle that, and went with a light chair that if we had to, we can, stand her up,
Mhm.
fold the chair up, throw it in there, and then, get her in there. But at the time in Egypt, there was this great big Muslim guy, and it's 130 degrees in Egypt, and he thought it was his mission to Allah to take this woman, carry her off of the bus and onto the bus like 30 different times every time we stopped. And sweat is just dripping down his thing, and he did it every single time. So don't make excuses for doing things that you think, oh, that would be too hard. Oh, well, do it anyway.
Mhm. Do it anyway. It's feel the fear and do it anyway. It's feel
Yeah.
discomfort. Make it. It's hard, but do it anyway. It's your only
Yes,
life.
spoken from
And
Adrian the adventurer.
yeah, and
Yeah.
what's great about your story about the gentleman who took it on as his mission to get your
Yeah.
wife on and off the bus. I mean, what a gift you gave to him, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So
he told
he's
his wife every night. We'd see him every day. And his wife, she thinks I'm, wonderful, and it,
yeah, yeah.
it was great.
Yes.
Now,
I
of course, one time I had some intestinal issues and I had to go to the bathroom frequently, so he kept stopping the bus, and I said, I need a restroom. I need a restroom now. And he pointed to something that looked like something, and I went in there, and all there was a hole in the ground
Hole in the floor.
with a water hose. So I had to figure out, okay, how is this done? So I finally figured out, okay,
Been there,
take off
done that.
all your clothes, hang them up, do what you got to do, and then hose yourself off, and then shake until you're dry, and then put your clothes back on. So, I mean, it was fun. We laugh about it now, but don't let life pass you by, because life is short. And with that, I'm going to take a quick break, so don't go away. We will be right back.
Anytime we suffer loss, we grieve. And a lot of people don't realize what even the grief process is. But it could be 5 to 7 steps ranging from denial, I don't believe this is happening, anger, oh my gosh, I'm so upset this is happening, to a form of bargaining, how can I get out of this, to depression, which is a very serious thing because that often leads to suicide. And then finally, after you realize you have no more control over your situation, and you're totally okay with the new normal that it brings, that wonderful, wonderful place called acceptance.
Being a caregiver takes a special person with passion and compassion. But even you can become a little burned out from time to time. The Caregivers Caregiver radio show was developed to help you overcome obstacles, adversity, and burnout, as well as just having a place to rest, relax, and recharge your batteries. We've all been there, and you're not alone. Now, you can take the Caregivers Caregiver with you. Get the top 25 radio shows in convenient form that plugs right into your USB car stereo or computer. Learn the techniques, tips, and encouragement we all need to better handle the day-to-day challenges. For around $1 per show, just $29.77, Get the credit card-sized USB card to have with you anytime you need a caregiver's pick-me-up. Just go to DaveTheCaregiversCaregiver.com and order yours today. Go to DaveTheCaregiversCaregiver.com now. Consider it an investment in you and ultimately an investment in them.
And we're back with Adrienne Gruberg and Denise Brown. I'm a little embarrassed. Thought I was hiding behind the microphone, and then I saw that I wasn't exactly. Now I'm hiding while I was eating something, sneaking in my lunch. But that's what caregivers do, isn't it?
Could I mention something
Of course you can.
about, yeah, we talking about fear and don't let the fear hold you back. Sometimes in caregiving, it's the fear of being different, right? We see ourselves as different than others. The wheelchair, the disability defines us as different, right? So we think, oh, I don't belong because we're different. We all belong. We all have differences. Some are more visible than others, but we all belong. We all belong.
Yep.
And all the stories that you told of your travels, Dave, show us that we belong. There's a place for us in every part
Sure.
of the world. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's true. Everyone wants to put us in the disabled group, and even support groups. My wife, they had a support group for caregivers and a support group for people who had strokes. And she went a few times, but she said, she can't talk, but of course she communicated that I don't want to be with those people. I want to be with normal people. I want to be with people who are like I used to be. I don't want to be reminded that I'm, surrounded by these people who have this disability. And that's how she copes with it. Now, other people may not feel that way, but that's how she feels. So she's always wanted to be the normal person.
And she wants to be with people who share her interests.
Right.
That's what it's all about, right? And why does a disability separate us from being with people who share our interests?
Right. That's an interest that she doesn't like.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Right.
She has interests. So it's all about being with people that you have that shared interest. Absolutely.
Yep. Let me ask you, how do we get acceptance when we're grieving, and how long should it take? How do we reach that acceptance? Some people say, oh, well, everyone takes their own amount of time to grieve. I made a mistake one time a few years ago before I knew better. And this woman was grieving the loss of her boyfriend. They were engaged to be married, so it was her fiance. And he tragically died suddenly. And 3 years later, I mean, she still has his picture on her Facebook thing, and so I just thought I'd say, because I could tell she was just stuck in grief, and I,
Mm-hmm.
as compassionately as I could, just said, maybe it's time to move on. And she just became irate and just chopped my head off and just said, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what I'm going through. Everyone grieves in their own time, and I don't want to get over this. So what's your opinion of that?
I think it's all about the letting go. But when we let go, we don't know what's next, right? Which is for her what she was holding on to. She knew what she had. If she lets go and moves into the unknown, will she find happiness again? Will she find love? I think part of the process is trusting that the best isn't behind us, that there still is another best ahead of us. And that the best doesn't disappear once we reach a certain age, right? Because we're always worried that we're too old or that, it only happens once. It happens as often as it happens. There's no limit. I think it's the whole idea that we have to be comfortable with the unknown and trusting that there's still good for us going forward. It's not what was. We want to embrace what was, treasure it, learn from it, and then be open to letting go of that so that we can find the next best for ourselves.
Now, I know everybody goes through their own grief time clock. What is a healthy and an unhealthy time to be in grief before we reach acceptance? I mean, is there an ideal, or is that an impossible question to answer?
I think that's an impossible question to answer because I've never found I've never been able to figure that out because everybody tells me how they handle it, and it's always different. So, for instance, someone who's a member of my site, Heather, has been in several caregiving situations. Her first one was with her husband, and her husband died when she was still in her 20s. And so she did what everybody says you shouldn't do in her first year. She moved, she changed careers. You know, they always say keep things, don't make big changes the year after. She made all big changes, and it was exactly right for her. It worked out perfectly. That was what was right for her. And there's others that just, I think maybe just need a little more time, and that's okay. That's okay. I think everybody goes through it on their own time frame. I think your question really is, when is the time frame now unhealthy?
Yeah.
What's the turn into unhealthy?
On both ends of the spectrum, because there are people who have gotten married after their wife. I know this guy after his wife died, and he started dating 3 months after she died, and they got married 6 months, after the death. And a lot of his friends, criticized him, well, he must not have really loved her and this and that. It's like, you can't win, you
Yeah.
darned if you do and you darned if you don't. So is there an unhealthy short amount of time?
Yeah, right, exactly. And when I hear a story like that, I think he loved his wife dearly. That's why he's ready to move on and love again.
Dealt
Yeah,
with
go ahead.
acceptance
I
healthily.
Yeah.
I had a thing where I was so involved in pre-grieving for a while. I mean, I knew the loss was coming, and Steve knew the loss was coming, and we were able to grieve together, which helped a great deal with moving to the next level. Is keeping that
Oh,
channel of communication open if you possibly can.
boy, what a great piece of advice, Adrian, and that is to be realistic. We have this idea that we're going to deny it, right? Let's not talk about it because it upsets people. But what happens is then you withhold this opportunity
Right.
to experience it together, to communicate, and then to heal together.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I was
powerful.
lucky.
That's powerful. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm curious, Adrian, after Steve died, how long did it take before you were even considering the possibility of dating again?
Well, I was on J-Date 4 days later, but that was just as an amusement.
What's J-Date?
What's
Was that like a site,
J-Date?
a dating site?
It's like Match.com, but for Jews. Literally.
Just
It
the
is.
day.
And, well,
So 4 days?
they've got it for Italians and Catholics and cowboys and truck drivers.
Oh,
Everybody's got their own site now.
I guess I'm out
But
of the loop
but
here. I may find that out one day.
it had been, it was so heavy an experience for so many years that I needed something light, and seeing the men that were out there for me was no one could hold a candle to Steve. So it was a joke for me, and it was light. And then it
So
was
when
two
did
and a
it
half
not
years
become a
before
joke? When were you more serious?
two and a
Yeah.
half years. The dog is
You know what else is interesting about that too, Adrian, is that it gave you something to do. So you knew what you were looking for. You probably knew maybe this isn't the time to find something serious, but it was a way to get out of the house, to connect with people and to just kind of enjoy something that felt maybe a little frivolous. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, what's interesting is I did not go out with anybody that I saw on any of the dating sites, not a one, until 2.5 years later, which is when I met the first person that I went out with, and we've been together since then.
But
So
did you see people and say, oh, I could go out with him, or he looks interesting, or stuff like that?
I suppose so,
Yeah. I know it was all
but not
probably
so
just a
much
joke
on
to you.
not so much on the sites. Like I was always keeping my eyes open on the street.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
That
Adrian's
dog
still
is a devil
attractive.
dog.
Adrian is still very attractive and has a lot of years left to give to some
I
worthy
hope.
person.
Who just walked in the house, which is why the
Oh,
dog
good.
barked.
Well, believe it or not, we've run out of time. Time goes so quickly when you're having fun, doesn't it? So, Denise, why
Does.
don't you share with us, how someone can get a hold of you, how someone who maybe wants to be interested in your classes or just anything about you, how can they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Yeah, best way is just go to the website. It's caregiving.com. You can find all the information about our courses. You can listen to our podcasts, videos, webinars. I do monthly webinars, and you can join. It's free.
Are they televised, or video webinars, or are they just audio?
It's audio.
Okay.
Audio.
We'll get you hooked up so you're doing video too.
Yeah, it helps.
I used to do Google Hangouts every Friday, and I
Mhm.
had to stop because of caregiving. That was one thing I stopped because of taking care of my parents, and I
Mm.
just never quite got back into it. But
How
yeah,
similar is it to what we're doing here as far as the
it's
video
similar.
platform? Yeah.
Yeah, Google Hangouts, it's similar, but yours is stable. Google
Hmm.
Hangouts sometimes is a little.
Yeah. This is very stable. That's why I'm still with it. It's been almost a year, I think. But we've had our
That's awesome.
challenges with other ones. So anyway, I just can't believe how fast this time has gone. Adrian, how can our listeners reach you?
It's Adrienne, ADRIENNE, at thecaregiverspace.org. Or if you want to find us on Facebook, it's the Caregiver Space. And we finally cracked that number, Dave.
160,000 followers.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's
Congratulations.
Finally,
awesome.
yeah.
Break the bottle
That's
of
awesome.
champagne over and shake it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Get us
That's
all
awesome.
wet.
And we now have the Facebook groups, which is really important.
That is amazing.
More
How many
confidential.
how many now?
I think 12
I,
groups.
Mm.
Denise, did I see a smaller Facebook group with a caregiving name on it? Do you do smaller groups as well on Facebook?
We just really have a fan page on
Okay.
Facebook, but it's a
Yeah.
smaller. Do I have to
Okay.
tell you the number? Because Adrian swallows me up. But yeah. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it's just a fan page.
Well, again, a reminder that all our live shows become recorded pod and videocast on our website, caregiverscaregiver.com, or if you want, davethecaregivers.com. They both get you there. And while you're there, take our short quiz to see if you're a candidate for burnout. And just for doing that, I'm going to send you my first book absolutely free at $10 value. Still getting rave reviews on Amazon. Unbelievable. One arm, one leg, 100 words, overcoming unbelievable hardships. My wife's amazing story. Denise, Adrian, thank you again for listening. Until next Wednesday at noon, may
You're
God richly
welcome.
bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Dave, the Caregivers Caregiver Radio Show. Make sure you tune in every Wednesday at noon Pacific Time and anytime afterwards on podcast to catch more of Dave and his tips to caregivers on avoiding burnout and surviving the grief process right here on the Worldwide Block Talk Radio Network. Goodbye.